Hey everyone, Sam here. Thanks for joining me. I hope you're having a beautiful day wherever you are in the world. In this video, I'm going to show you how to paint some sparkling, shimmering water in this landscape that features a river with some willow trees that are being bathed in the summer sunlight. I'm also going to give you some tips on creating atmospheric depth in your painting, so getting your values right. Values is how light or dark a subject is. Also some tips on mixing colour as well. Now just before I start the video, I'd like to quickly tell you about my Patreon channel. Each month I upload a full-length extended painting tutorial video plus lesson notes, reference photos and other content as well, all for just $5 a month, and I've put a link in the description box below. So without further ado, we'll get straight into the video. Strap yourselves in and I hope you enjoy it. I'm painting on some loose linen here which I've taped to a board. The linen is Belgium linen, it's a medium weave and it's oil primed. I'm sketching out the composition using burnt sienna mixed with liquid original, and as I'm using oil paints, the liquid original is going to improve the flow of the paint and speed up the drying time. Now the brand of paints I'm using is Blue Ridge Oils, and the colours I'm using includes titanium white, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, cadmium yellow, cadmium red light, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue and phthalo green. I love using Blue Ridge oils, and if you want to get some, I've put a link in the description box below. Now the composition's sketched out here, and the first thing I do whenever I start a painting is I identify where all the dark values and shadows are in the scene first that I'm painting. So here I'm painting this background hill, and to mark in the shadows here I've used a mix of ultramarine blue with a little yellow ochre and some titanium white. Now there's kind of two main zones here of shadows in the painting. So we've got this background hill, and then really it's just the trees and the riverbank in the foreground. The shadows in the trees are going to be some of the darkest values in the painting. Now because trees are also some of the darkest values to be found in the landscape, especially as there's a lot of occlusion shadows in trees, we're actually going to find our darkest shadows here in the foreground. And this is because the value scale is used to its full extent. So value is how light or dark a subject is, and we'll find our darkest darks and our lightest lights in the foreground. As landforms recede, darks are not as dark and lights are not as light, and that's because the value scale narrows. So our darkest shadows in those hills are going to be much lighter than the shadows in these trees and the riverbank here. Now for the trees I also used a mix of ultramarine blue with a little yellow ochre. When it comes to painting the areas in light, like on this background hill, because it's further away the colour's not going to be as saturated either, so we're going to lose a lot of the saturation, especially in greens and yellows, the further it recedes into the distance. Now if I was to use a really saturated green for these hills here, then it would bring the whole thing forward in the painting and it just wouldn't work. You can see how much more saturated now the green is that I'm using for these willow trees here as I mark out the canopies. The greens I used for this willow tree, I mixed using cadmium yellow with some ultramarine blue, a little yellow ochre. Then there's some titanium white, not a lot, but just a little bit to make the value lighter. And then I've just balanced out the colour a little bit by mixing in a red, so cadmium red light. I've just mixed in a small amount. That's just going to harmonise the green a little bit and just make it look a bit more natural. Now as this is just a short video and I'm just showing you a bit of the blocking in process, as the title of the video suggests, it's about painting the water. So for the rest of this video I'm just going to focus on how to paint the water. Now if you want to see a full-length version of this video, I do have an extended version that's over an hour long on my Patreon channel, and you can also purchase it individually from my website. So I've put the link in the description box below. So now moving on to the water, and it's kind of divided into a couple of areas. So we've got an area of the water that's relatively slow moving and still, and that's reflecting the vegetation in the hill in the background, and then there's another area of the water where that's reflecting the sky. So I break it up into simple parts, and at the moment I'm painting the more stiller areas of the water. I've used a mix of ultramarine blue with yellow ochre, titanium white and a little burnt sienna, so that's a nice kind of organic colour mix to use that you can use for painting water that's reflecting vegetation. It's a good go-to colour mix. Now when I started painting this, I made the value a little bit too dark, but I actually adjusted it later on in the painting to reflect the background a bit more. But I'm using broad gestural brush marks at this stage and applying the paint with a number 5 flat brush. I'm also loosely marking out where some of those ripples are going to go. And now this is the area where the river is moving a little faster and it's reflecting the sky. It's a bit more turbulent, there's more ripples there. And the colours I've used to mix this is ultramarine blue with a little burnt sienna, some alizarin crimson and quite a bit of titanium white. So it's quite a pale low chroma blue here. I'm quickly marking in these areas with my number 5 flat brush and then painting in the transition zones between the stiller areas of the water and this more turbulent area. Also starting to paint some of the suggestions of ripples that I can then build on later on in the painting. Now water is one of those tricky things to paint, but I find that it helps to just observe water in real life if you can, or even from photographs, and just look at how some of these ripples move. I often treat ripples like little hills where the darker areas could be like the hill shadows and then the lighter areas over the top. I'm also starting to build up some more of these ripples here on the right side of the painting, and I've just added a bit more ultramarine blue into my existing mix. Now at this point of the painting the blocking in stage was nearly complete and I left it to dry and then came back to it and was able to start building up much more detail. At this point in the painting I'd done quite a bit of work on the background and also those trees in the foreground as well. There was still a lot of work to do on the trees, but I was just building up those layers. And then as I worked through the painting and build up more detail, I progressively add lighter layers of paint so that I'm saving my lightest values until right at the very end. So I keep the painting tonally darker throughout, building up lighter layers as I work through it, and then just saving those light values till right at the very end of the painting. So here at this point with the river, I'd also made a value adjustment to those still areas so the value was lighter, and then I was making the process of building up some of these ripples, and I'm using a 1/4 inch ivory dagger brush, which is really great for painting ripples because you can use that angled edge of the brush. It makes a nice sharp edge to it, and then you can also use the tip of the brush as well for ripples. You can just get some really great marks with it, and it's just really good for painting water. I got these brushes from Rosemary & Co. I've been using Rosemary & Co. brushes for years and I definitely recommend them. And if you want to get some Rosemary & Co. brushes, I've put a link in the description box below. Now I'm building up the form of the river here, and just one thing to note, if we take a look at the reference photo here, you'll see that one of the features that I really liked about this river was the bright sun shimmering on the surface of the water, but in parts of the river, especially in the midground, it looks quite burnt out with the light, and I didn't think that would translate well in a painting. So what I decided I would do was I would still paint these sparkles on the water, but I paint them much more sparingly. So I've been building up these areas of the water that's reflecting the sky here in the midground as well, and making that much more prominent, and then I'll just be adding a few sparkles at the end of the painting. Now at this point in the painting it was coming together and I was getting into the finer detail part of it, so making sure that everything's adding up. I painted much more reflections, so reflections of these willow trees that are in the background, the shadows in the willow trees, and then also the grass at the edge of the riverbank. So that's also made this area of the water much lighter in value as well. And then there was more ripples to be added and adding lighter layers. I'm still using the same colours that I was using during the block-in stage, and that was a mix of ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, titanium white and a little alizarin crimson, but much more titanium white in the mix. Burnt sienna is a dark orange, so it combines really well with ultramarine blue. Blue is opposite to orange on the colour wheel, so it desaturates the blue. So I've only used a little bit of burnt sienna in the mix, but just enough just to knock that blue back a little bit. And then using this 1/4 inch ivory dagger brush just to get some nice fine marks in there and really build up the form of the ripples. So at this point in the painting I was in the final stages, just adding the last details, and this is the real fun part, adding these sparkles to the shimmering water. I've used really thick paint here. I've actually mixed in some liquid impasto medium, which is perfect for applying thick paint, which we want to do right at the end of the painting. So I start with thin layers of paint and then I build up those thicker layers. I'm using a number 0 round brush. It's a synthetic round brush, so again the bristles meet to a nice fine point, and I'm literally just painting little dots of paint. I'm using a mix of titanium white with just a dash of yellow ochre, and that's just going to warm up the white so it's not that ice cold white that you get straight from the tube. Now it's these sparkles that I've saved right until the end that's really bringing that water to life. I also painted a few shimmering leaves in the willow trees as well, and that's also adding to the overall three-dimensional form of these trees. It goes a long way to communicate a bright summer's day. Now I really enjoyed painting this artwork, especially on this loose linen, and then I finished it up by peeling off the masking tape to reveal the painting underneath. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Also hit the bell notification to be notified of whenever I upload a new video. Feel free to leave me a comment in the comments section below. I do read all the comments and I do my best to respond to as many of them as I can. Now, if you'd like to learn more about painting landscapes, including the painting that was in this video, you've got to check out my Patreon channel, where each month I upload a full-length extended painting tutorial video, very often over an hour long, where I show you everything. And also reference photos, lesson notes and content throughout the month, all for just $5 a month. And there's over 2.5 years worth of videos on there, so it's kind of like a landscape painting course. So if you want to improve your painting skills, or you're a complete beginner and you're new to painting, then check out my Patreon channel. It will really help you with your painting. So as I said, I'll put the link in the description box below. It's just $5 a month. Now, if you go to my website at samuelearp.com, I've got some free written painting tutorials on there on my painting blog, and I also have individual painting tutorial videos for sale from my website, including a video of how to paint this particular landscape that we've obviously just seen in this particular video, so that's there for sale as well. So check the link below, it's samuelearp.com, and also if you subscribe to my email list, I'm giving away a free ebook on Introduction to Oil Painting, and again I'll put the link in the description box below. So I hope you enjoyed this video and it inspires you to paint water and paint landscapes. Thanks for watching. I hope you're having a beautiful day wherever you are in the world, and I shall see you in the next video.